Shannon Bream. As President Trump prepares for the State of the Union, he's weighing possible military action against Iran and rolling out tough new tariffs after a major loss at the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court.
The Supreme Court rules against the president on some of his biggest revenue-raising tariffs, potentially forcing the government to reimburse billions of dollars to hundreds of U.S. companies, both large and small. We'll get reaction from U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Then,
Mr. President, what's your message to the Iranian people after 2 rounds of talks with them?
They better negotiate a fair deal.
the gathering storm in the Middle East as U.S. forces bolster their strength near Iran, even as indirect talks continue. We'll talk with Jim Banks, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Plus, voters are already casting ballots in the three-way Texas Republican Senate primary. Congressman Wesley Hunt joins us to talk about his long-shot bid and fallout over the Epstein files, as the man formerly known as Prince Andrew could face charges that can carry a life sentence.
It's good to see some high-profile, powerful individual get what they deserve.
All right now on Fox News Sunday. Hello from Fox News in Washington. We begin with a look at some of today's top stories. A powerful nor'easter is set to dump several inches of snow with blizzard conditions and coastal flooding from the mid-Atlantic up into New England today into tomorrow, affecting nearly 100 million Americans. The heavy, wet snow is expected to cause power outages and other damage. More than 6,000 flights have already been canceled. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security says it is suspending TSA pre-check and global entry airport security programs because of the partial government shutdown over funding DHS. In a statement, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says shutdowns have serious real-world consequences and blame Democrats. In the Middle East, U.S. forces continue to build up near Iran as President Trump considers strikes if progress is not made in talks over Tehran's nuclear program. Fox News Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst joins us from Tel Aviv, Israel, with the latest. Trey.
Shannon, good morning. Protests erupted this weekend at Iranian universities for the first time since the regime crackdown earlier this year. Students chanted "Long live the King" and "Freedom" as they marched through their campuses. Saturday marked their return to a new semester and renewed demonstrations against the government. In the capital of Tehran, Iran's president did not address the protests directly, but spoke broadly about the ongoing international pressure against Iran.
We will not bow down in the face of any of these difficulties. World powers are lining up with cowardice to force us to bow our heads. Just as you did not bow in the face of difficulties, we will not bow down in the face of these problems.
Iranian officials told Reuters that indirect talks between the U.S. and Iran are set to resume in early March, but that views differ over the scope and mechanism for sanctions relief. The comments come amid an ongoing military buildup in the Middle East that continues at this hour. Overnight, more C-17 transport planes traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, and reports indicate at a single Jordanian airbase there are now 60 attacked aircraft and 68 cargo planes. With the region on the brink of war, a UN spokesperson is calling for diplomatic efforts to prevail.
And I can tell you and reiterate yet again that we are very concerned about the heightened rhetoric we're seeing around the region, by the heightened military activities, war games, or just military, increased military naval presence and in the region. And we encourage both the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran to continue to engage in diplomacy in order to settle the differences.
Here in Israel, people are bracing for conflict to begin any day. Tonight, the Israeli Security Cabinet will meet to determine what comes next. Shannon?
All right, Trey Yingst, thank you very much. So President Trump and the First Lady hosted governors at the White House last night, the final event of the annual National Governors Association here in Washington. We're told no Democratic governors were spotted in the room. It's been a tough week for the president after a major setback at the Supreme Court Friday. In a moment, we'll talk with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. But first, Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson joins us from the White House with some breaking news. Good morning, Lucas.
Good morning, Shannon. Secret Service says early this morning it shot and killed an armed man who had breached the perimeter at Mar-a-Lago. President Trump was not there. He was here at the White House. Fox News is told the man was armed with a shotgun and a gas can. Now, before this breaking news, Shannon, President Trump said he was irked about the 2 Supreme Court justices he appointed who ruled against his tariff program.
I think it's an embarrassment to their families. You want to know the truth? The 2 of them.
Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett receiving special attention from the president, who said he was surprised by their decision to join 4 other justices in striking down his use of tariffs under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, or IEEPA, from 1977. Writing the majority opinion, Chief Justice Roberts said the law doesn't mention the word tariffs. Normally in lockstep with Roberts, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, writing in dissent, disagreed with the majority's reading of the statute. Quote, I would conclude that the president's power under IEEPA to regulate importation encompasses tariffs. The president's top advisors say tariffs will continue to be levied using different authorities.
President Trump told us from the beginning that we had to have a backup plan and a backup plan for the backup plan in case the Supreme Court ruled against his first stride.
Nothing has changed, but what has changed, the Supreme Court has taken away the president's leverage.
Since returning to the White House, President Trump has used tariffs to negotiate new trade deals with other countries, bringing in an estimated $175 billion.
If the tariffs are illegal, then the money must be returned.
Trump says that issue will likely be tied up in court for years.
Wouldn't you think they would have put one sentence in there saying that keep the money or don't keep the money, right?
Also not receiving money right now, the 3rd largest government agency, the Department of Homeland Security. The partial government shutdown has lasted more than a week. Congress returns for the State of the Union address and can vote to fund DHS. Now, going back to Palm Beach, the Secret Service says a press conference will be held at 9:30 this morning. It says the individual who breached the compound at Mar-a-Lago was a male in his early 20s. We should find out more about the incident soon. Shannon?
All right, we'll have that as it happens. Lucas Tomlinson reporting from the White House. Thank you very much. Joining us now, Ambassador Jamieson Greer, our U.S. Trade Representative. Good to have you back on the show, sir.
Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so let's start here. You've got a lot of other options. The president has already activated some of those. Some will take time. Some will need congressional action. In the meantime, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget predicts that Friday's ruling from the Supreme Court could add, they say, $2.4 trillion to the debt. They say the fiscal situation was already unsustainable under CBO's latest baseline, but the outlook is now materially worse following the court's ruling on IEEPA tariffs. So what do you say to those who say the IEEPA gamble may not have been worth it?
Well, that's just not true at all. Coming into this administration, the president detected immediately that there was an emergency. The trade deficit, which is more stuff coming in from overseas versus being made here, that trade deficit blew up by 40% under Biden. So he took emergency action. Immediately, all of our trade partners around the world came to the table to negotiate market opening deals with us, and we protected our industries right away. So it's exactly the right thing to do. In the wake of this case, we can use other authorities that are frankly very sound and very strong. So we're very confident that we'll be able to continue reconstructing this program.
So one group of analysts who tracks what's going on in China and with respect to these trade issues says they're delighted about this ruling on Friday. And there are worries that they may find this ruling to be a reason not to live up to some of their current commitments. Reuters reporting this: without tariffs as a stick, U.S. soybeans would struggle to compete against rival Brazil, where a huge harvest currently underway has made the South American country's soybeans far cheaper. South China Morning Post says this: the decision removes a powerful tool the White House had used to pressure Beijing, potentially weakening Washington's bargaining position. We know you do have other things in place and others that you will add. They take a little bit more time. But does this hurt the U.S. position with the president going into this meeting with President Xi in late March, early April?
Well, we're obviously disappointed with the case, which was wrongly decided, but the president and President Xi have developed a very strong and stable relationship. Scott Bessent and myself, we've established strong relationships with our counterparts. Our deals were not premised on whether or not this case remains in place or not. As you mentioned, we have a variety of tools. We've had tariffs on China since 2018. Even now, the average tariff on China is still about 40%. We have other tools if we need to use it. The point isn't trying to fight with China. It's really to have stability for the soybean farmers you mentioned, for people who are selling aircrafts and medical devices, and folks who want to be able to import some things we can't get elsewhere from China. And we're still on track for that. The meeting in April is still on track. We think it will be very successful.
What are the primary goals for that meeting?
Well, first of all, we want to make sure that China is complying with its part of the deal. So that means they continue to buy the products they said they would buy. They continue to send us rare earths. It's also a chance for the president and President Xi to meet, solidify their relationship, talk about what the relationship looks like over the next 6 months to a year. We expect President Xi will be coming here in the fall at some point. And so on one hand, it's about continuing stability, monitoring the implementation of the agreement, and building on that relationship for the future.
Okay, let's talk about this issue of refunds, because the court gave no direction on exactly how that may happen with respect to the IEEPA tariffs. A couple of Democrats out there have ideas, though. Governor Gavin Newsom says that this administration needs to cut checks for every American who paid a certain amount by averages with respect to the impact on their budgets with respect to these tariffs. Governor J.B. Pritzker actually put it together with an invoice. He says in a letter, on behalf of the people of Illinois, I demand a refund of $1,700 for every family in Illinois, bringing the total damages you owe to $8,679,261,600.
I wouldn't believe a thing that jerk had to say.
Now, that we're showing on the screen, what's going to be the response from the White House on that?
Well, first of all, it's clear that neither of these two guys has ever worked in import-export business, because that's just not how it works. These are people who sued the president, their state sued the president, they wanted to overturn these tariffs. And if they knew anything about it, they would know that the returns just go to companies, often foreign companies, with a subsidiary here in the U.S. I mean, if they want to change this, they need to talk to their Democratic members of Congress and say, here's how we want the refunds to work. They should have known full well that when this one, that if this case were overturned, it would really redound to the benefit of foreigners, foreign workers, foreign companies who have subsidiaries here in the U.S. who might get any refunds. We'll let the court figure out how that's going to happen. If these guys want to have a different outcome than what they tried to get from the case, then they'll have to go to Congress and see what they can do.
Okay,
exactly.
With respect to those business refunds, in a number of the legal filings, in a number of these cases over the IEEPA tariffs, the government represented to the courts that they would pay out refunds to the plaintiffs if they lost. Now, does that go beyond the plaintiffs of this case? Will you guys fight attempts for people to regain refunds, or will those be paid out?
Well, it's a matter for the court, Shannon. The Supreme Court declined to say this. They decided to overturn the president's tariffs in this element, right? We have other tariff authorities, of course, but they didn't give any guidance on this. In prior cases where there were similarly broad issues, the lower court, the Court of International Trade, actually took a fairly strong hand in talking about any refunds and the process for that. So it's a matter for the courts. They created the situation, and we'll follow whatever they say to do.
Exactly.
Okay, Ambassador Greer, thank you for your time. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, joining us now for another take, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Great to have you back, Mr.
Wouldn't
Leader.
believe a thing he has to say.
Good morning. Great to be on.
Okay, so you heard Ambassador Greer. He talked about all the positives that have come from the tariffs. He talked about the ability to negotiate and change trade as we now know it. Assessing the effect of the tariffs a few weeks ago at the end of 25, Fortune said this: Trump's higher tariffs are certainly raising money. They've raked in more than $236 billion, much more in the past. And the trade deficit, meanwhile, has fallen significantly since the start of 25. The article says that tariffs have slashed the deficit in half. Is that not a good thing for Americans?
Well, the trade deficit has not been meaningfully closed. That's number one. Point number two is that we know farmers and small business owners, companies, as well as perhaps most importantly, the American consumer, have been hurt, being forced to pay thousands of dollars more per year in additional expense when the affordability crisis right now is already crushing everyday Americans, middle-class Americans, and working-class Americans. And we also haven't seen a return of manufacturing jobs to the United States of America, which is what the Trump administration promised would take place.
So to the point of affordability, inflation is down, wage growth is up, it's far outpacing inflation. Consumer sentiment is positive. Small business consumer sentiment is positive as well. I mean, there are a lot of markers that seem to be moving in the right direction.
Right.
American people, I mean, gas prices down, grocery prices have slowed. Are those not positives?
Well, the American people understand that this administration promised that they would lower costs on day one. That's the standard that this administration, that the president himself set. Costs haven't gone down in the United States of America. We know costs have gone up. Housing costs out of control, grocery costs out of control, electricity bills out of control, healthcare costs out of control, and child care costs out of
Nonsense.
control. America right now is far too expensive. And we all should be working together to lower the high cost of living.
And you
to
shut
bring
down
about
the
a situation
government.
in this country where if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to live an affordable life. Far too many people in this country, this is not Democrats or Republicans, these are Americans. This is not a partisan issue. Far too many people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, can barely survive, and certainly can't thrive. And that's the second situation that we need to change decisively here in the United States of America.
Okay, but fair to say, looking at the data, that huge spikes in things like grocery prices and other things happened under the Biden administration. I mean, near record levels of inflation at 9%. That's not going to change overnight, but if it's now nearing 2%, and rent prices have cooled, gas prices are down, those things have happened. I mean, you can't
Right.
change all of that overnight. Do you not acknowledge that a lot of that happened under the last administration?
We're focused right now on the here and now in terms of
Which
what the
takes
American
time.
people are confronting. This is 2026. Listen, the president himself is the one who said that costs were going to go down on day one.
And they have.
That's not the standard that we as Democrats set. That's the standard that the president set. Now,
Now you're back with
in
Biden,
your
buddy.
own Fox News poll, 70% of the American people believe that the economy is not moving in the right direction. So this is not the Democratic position. This is the position of the American people. And we're determined to do everything possible, working with anyone, anytime, any place, to lower the high cost of living, because we do have an affordability crisis in America. It's not a hoax. It's very real. And it's impacting people all throughout the land.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about the Supreme Court case because you celebrated it on Friday, as many Democrats did. You have been very critical of the Supreme Court. It has had many Democrats calling them corrupt, saying they're in the pocket of President Trump, saying they need to be term limited, the court needs to be expanded. After the decision on Friday, which included a couple of the president's own nominees voting against him and the arguments he was making, are Democrats now prepared to say that the court is neutral, it's independent, and you'll stop talk of packing or term limiting the court?
I've strongly disagreed with Supreme Court decisions in the past and will continue to do so. However, the Supreme Court in this instance did the right thing. In terms of packing the court, that's not a discussion that we've engaged in. As Democrats, listen, we've made clear to the American people, we've made clear, and I've certainly made clear, that we're focused on trying to do three things at this moment. Lower the high cost of living, fix our broken healthcare system. We can begin by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits so that tens of millions of hardworking American taxpayers don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles throughout the year. And of course, we also need to get ICE under control and deliver immigration enforcement in this country that's fair, that's just, that's humane, so that taxpayer dollars aren't being used to actually kill American citizens like Renee Nicole Good.
Okay, so let's unpack some of that. First of all, about the ACA subsidies. That was the last time you were here. We were talking about the shutdown that lasted 43 days, had an enormous impact on the economy, and a lot of people who missed a lot of paychecks. And yet Democrats who held the votes necessary to move things forward ultimately moved forward without a change to the ACA subsidies. We come to find out 90 to 93% of people who are on these ACA marketplaces are getting federal subsidies, meaning other taxpayers are paying into that. That doesn't sound affordable. So what about the promise of the Affordable Care Act that we're now still fighting about these subsidies because it is so difficult to be paid for?
Well, listen, we have a broken healthcare system and we need to fix it in a comprehensive way. Ideally, we should fix
thanks
it in
to
a bipartisan way.
Biden
Part
and
of the challenge
you
that
and
we've confronted
your
during
Democrats.
this administration is the one big ugly bill enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. As a result of that policy, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics are closing all throughout the country, including in rural America. People are struggling. And part of the way in which we can fix this is to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to impact everyone in blue states, in purple states, and in red states. In fact, in Republican-controlled states, people who have lost their Affordable Care Act tax credits are suffering the most. We're talking about states like Wyoming or West Virginia, Alaska, South Carolina, Texas. These are states where people are struggling. So we're trying to resolve this issue on behalf of everyone.
Okay, so to the issue of those cuts, you know that a lot of that has to do with either waste pattern abuse, or it has to do with eligibility and making sure that those benefits are there for people who actually need them, not able-bodied adults or those who are choosing not to work as part of the system. And there is money in there for those hospitals. They can reopen under an emergency basis. The money is there to help them move forward. So all of that was part of the One Big Beautiful Bill too. But where we get to now is ICE. You know it's funded. Why shut down the government? We get new information this morning that TSA PreCheck is going away, global entry is going away. You know, there's real worry now. TSA and FEMA are not going to get paid. There's a winter storm coming to your northeastern location there. Why take away funding from FEMA, from TSA, the Coast Guard, and others when ICE is fully funded? Why not reopen the government?
Well, let's remember, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency to the extent there is ever a shutdown, as was the case with the 43-day Trump Republican shutdown in the fall.
They cannot move forward out of a shutdown without Democrat votes. They can't do it. You guys have got to go with them.
So let's talk. Okay, so let's talk about that. Our basic value proposition is that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not to brutalize or kill them, as was done with an ICU
You're not going to shut down ICE
Alex
as part of this shutdown. And those are tragic cases that are being investigated and must be. We need answers on that. But
I'm happy to respond. I'm happy to respond if you give me the opportunity to respond.
Well, so respond honestly, buddy. Goodness gracious, shame on you.
Dramatic changes to ICE that are bold, that are transformational, and that are meaningful. That include lifting up the Fourth Amendment and ensuring that judicial warrants are actually required before ICE agents can break into the homes.
You just want to keep all these illegals here to vote for you.
Independent investigation so that if ICE breaks the law, state and local authorities can investigate.
You and Biden are the same way. All these illegals in the country need to be sent out.
We believe that sensitive locations like houses of worship, like hospitals, like schools, and like polling sites should be protected. These are basic common sense demands that have been laid out. And unfortunately, rather than dramatically reform ICE, the administration has decided to shut down FEMA, shut down the TSA, and shut down the Coast Guard.
They will say your votes are doing that. And, you know, there's a lot of debate in there. We hope you find some common ground, because there are some things there it sounds like Republicans agree with you on as well, and the American people too. House Minority Leader Jeffries, always good to have you. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
All right. Coming up, a stunning arrest. Former Prince Andrew swept up in allegations connected to Jeffrey Epstein. But what about accountability here in the U.S.? Our Sunday panel on that next.
Three are happily invited. No, they're barely invited. Honestly, I couldn't care less if they come, okay?
All right, we're going to see who shows up on Tuesday night. President Trump expressing his displeasure with the justices who ruled against him in Friday's tariff opinion. Time now for our Sunday group. Meredith McGraw, White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams.
Wouldn't listen to a word he had to say.
Ferguson podcast, and Michael Allen, former Bush national security official. Okay, so the dust is still settling from this decision on Friday. We know how the president feels about it. He's got a lot of things to address at the State of the Union on Tuesday, as those justices may or may not be sitting there. Council on Foreign Relations says this. The speech is his opportunity to make the case to the American public for the policies he's enacted over the first 13 months of his second term, reverse his sliding poll numbers, and rally Republican voters in preparation for the November midterm elections. And Michael, in the midst of that, maybe will we get an explanation on what may be happening or not with Iran?
I think so. We have as much as 50% of our deployable air power surrounding Iran right now. We're much closer to a military strike than a diplomatic deal. The maximum Iran can give will not meet the minimum that the United States can accept. So think about what the president is weighing right now and why he needs to talk to the American people about this. It's the risks of military action versus the moment that we're in with Iran, the weakest anti-American nuclear weapon-seeking terrorist regime has ever been it's an opportunity to help shove them and maybe enable the Iranian people to come out on the streets again and take down the Ayatollahs. So weighty matters of war and peace, and I know the president must discuss this Tuesday
Exactly.
night.
Well, and Meredith, he's got a lot to discuss, domestically as well. You heard the leader talk about affordability. They're going to keep hammering the president on that. And people in our polling show us they don't feel the good things that are showing up in the data yet.
And that's something that President Trump is really going to have to hammer home in this State of the Union address. People aren't feeling as confident about the economy as the administration would like them to feel, and the president is going to have to explain to the American people how his economic policies might help them further down the road. But it's something that the administration keeps coming up against, and it's going to be their main message going into the midterms. And when I've spoken with White House officials, they've acknowledged that this is going to be the key part of his State of the Union address, and I think we can expect him to maybe lay out some new policies too, perhaps on housing or other affordability issues that they're working on.
Well, and Ben, we know that the leader is going to show up, Hakeem Jeffries, but he's told Democrats, some of them are saying they're absolutely not coming, but he's told them not to interrupt.
Yeah.
He says silent resistance is the name of the game on Tuesday night. Can they do it?
I don't know if they'll listen to him at all. I mean, you've also the same party that has what I think it's 4 or 5 responses.
Oh, we're going to get into that. Yeah.
But I mean, the Democratic Party right now, it's like, can you control your base? I think the answer is no. And Hakeem Jeffries said something very interesting in your interview, which you said that we have a healthcare system that's a failure. That would be called Obamacare. I mean, that's not exactly the best talking point going into the State of the Union, but I think what the president has to do is he's got to be clear about where we're going and what is happening now. No tax on tips has just become a reality. No tax on overtime has just become a reality. So he does have to keep it very simple for the American people and lay out a couple of things that they can look at to be excited about that are now here for this year. Look at the price of cars, for example. He talks about getting rid of some of the over-regulations there. Those are things I think American people can wrap their head around. And the president, I do think, needs to keep this tight. He needs to keep it very clear, and he needs to move on from that quickly and say, here's where we're going. I've got you. I understand what you need and what you want, and this is how we're rolling it out for you. And then look, same thing on Iran. He's got to look at it and say, this is a simple issue of national security, America. These people cannot have a nuclear weapon. They have told us what they'll do with that nuclear weapon. Do not let them get it. That's why you elected me, and I'm committed to that. If he does it that way, I think it'll have an effect tonight.
Well, and Juan, we got to talk about your party. Because they got a big party going on Tuesday night, because we got a lot of different people who are going to, we know that newly elected Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, she's going to give the official response. Then we're told there's Spanish language response from Senator Padilla, the progressive response from Representative Summer Lee. There are counter rallies at the same time, People's Union, State of the Union, and State of the Swamp. Is there a united message for Democrats coming out of this?
Yeah, I think it's opposition to President Trump, and it's very clear, we've touched on it a little bit here this morning, that if you look at the Fox polls, the opposition is just overwhelming. I mean, his disapproval right now is 53%. But if you look at the big issue, the economy, what you see there is 61% disapproval, and on tariffs, the big news of this past week, 63%. So the idea that the Democrats have different messages is probably true, and you have different arms of the party. I think you have people on the far left. You saw Summer Lee there is going to do the kind of progressive thing. But I think in terms of the middle, the moderate message is going to come from Senator Padilla and Governor Spanberger. I think it's going to be very clear that President Trump is really trying to tell you in the State of the Union that you should not respond to your own feelings and what your eyes see. You should believe him and numbers and say, oh, the economy might be getting better. Things are better than they seem. But essentially, who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the president or your lying grocery bill? I mean, it's like, wow.
I believe the president, and I believe what I see for myself.
It's like he
groceries
has
and otherwise.
Strategy. Biden also was saying, look at the numbers. The stock market's doing better. And Americans were saying, no. The day-to-day experience of living in this country, of affording health care, child care, is crazy.
Thanks to Biden.
One thing I don't
Thanks
think
to Biden.
on Tuesday night is going to be Jeffrey Epstein. But there are some big developments on that front, including the arrest of former Prince Andrew. Newsweek says this: the release of the files, though, haven't spurred the same public reckoning for Epstein's associates in the United States, at least so far. Ben, should we expect there will be any action against bold-faced names here in the U.S.?
I hope so. I think that's what the American people want. I think that's actually what the world wants. There was too many crimes that were committed by too many people for no one to get arrested besides Epstein and his madam. Like, that is the part where I think people have lost all faith in government in general. And the president said, okay, here it is. It's all out there. And when you see an arrest in the UK before the US, that frustrates a lot of Americans. So I hope that there is some accountability for really wealthy, rich individuals. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. But there are far too many people that are involved with him, and they need to go full speed on this, or the American people are going to say, I still don't trust law enforcement.
Well, and Michael Flynn from the first Trump administration, we all know well his story. He tweeted this out because he's really big on this Epstein thing, too. He says, if the Brits can arrest a royal, why can't America arrest blank? Provide a name, please. And Meredith, he leaves that open. He says the president could turn this to his advantage, but he thinks it's a missed opportunity at this point.
Well, the Epstein case continues to follow the president, and I think it's been very frustrating for the White House when I've talked to them about it, because they have, you know, lots of other things that they would like to focus on, and yet the public has these very real demands that they want accountability here, and they want to see justice. And I think, you know, as to his point, when people look and they see Prince Andrew get arrested, and then they look around and see all of the very powerful and wealthy people that have been named in these files, they want to see some accountability, and I think that's something that we continue to hear from the survivors as well.
Michael?
This is a big moment for the United States. I hope the victims receive some sort of accountability from their government.
Amen.
But if you think about this just in a larger governmental sense, as you began to talk about, this is what fuels populism, breeds resentment, and lack of confidence in institutions in the U.S. government. We've got to do better.
Quick final word, Juan.
Well, I just think that Senator Ossoff of Georgia said, you know, the Epstein class, and that they are due a reckoning, and the billionaires, you know, I just think this goes across political lines.
It does.
I think that the people that, when, especially in the populist message, they say, oh, we hate the elites. Well, wait a minute, these are the elites you say you're hating. Why don't you go after them?
We would like answers, and more of them hopefully are coming. Panel, thank you very much. We'll see you next Sunday. Up next, Russia once again hammering Ukraine, raining down dozens of missiles, hitting key infrastructure overnight. So are these ongoing talks really accomplishing anything? We're going to take you live to Kyiv, the very latest on the war. Next.